greetings and salutations. I don't know how to film this video. So I decided that I wanted to make just a bunch of videos during December because I get sad during December around the holidays, and something that is nice for me and helps my brain is to keep busy. So I was like, I'm gonna make a bunch of videos, and I came up with ideas for the videos, and one of them I was like, wow, that would be so funny if I did that. And that idea was that I consume some alcohol, and I try to recap the entire like Camp Half-Blood Chronicles after a couple glasses of alcohol. Because I'm a massive lightweight, so all that I need to be like tipsy is like a drink. I've had one drink and I feel like I can tell. I feel warm. I don't know if it'll be visible. It probably is. I'm a lightweight, and my excuse is that I am on medication that makes, you know, me sensitive to drinking. And also, I don't know, I'm small, I don't eat that much, and I also don't drink very often, so my, like, tolerance isn't great. But, so I've had one, and I'm having another while I film this, and, I'm gonna try and recap the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles. I'm gonna break it into separate videos, probably. So this first part will be the Percy Jackson series. This one I feel confident about because I've read the first series like 1,000 times, and I know this shit. Cheers, let's go. Look at my drink, it's pink. Can you see that it's pink? All right, Percy Jackson. We start off with a 12-year-old kid. And he goes to a school for troubled kids, as he puts it, which means that he goes to a school for kids who've been kicked out of other schools, really. He's a little 12-year-old. Did I say he's 12? I think I already said he's 12. He is going on a field trip with his class to the we were geeking out on ancient Greek at the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. There we go. Gotta sing the musical sometimes. They're going there, and Percy has a very mean math teacher, and the math teacher sees him not push a girl into a fountain, but a girl fell into a fountain, and everyone was like, Percy pushed her. So this mean teacher is like, Percy, come with me. And she takes him away, and she transforms into a monster. Percy's other teacher, Mr. Brunner, who's a cool teacher, wheels in. He's in a wheelchair. He wheels in. He throws Percy a pen and goes, "What ho, Percy!" Percy catches the pen. It transforms into a sword. He swings it at the mean teacher, Mrs. Dodds. I don't think I mentioned her name was Mrs. Dodds, but her name is Mrs. Dodds. He swings it at her. She explodes into dust. Percy doesn't know what the heck is going on. And I can't remember how, but like a second later, he walks out, and Mr. Brunner's there, and he's like, "Where's my pen?" And Percy gives him his pen, and he's like, "Okay, thanks." And Percy's like, "What happened to Mrs. Dodds?" Mr. Brunner's like, "We've never had a teacher named Mrs. Dodds." Fast forward like months, and every kid at this school is lying to Percy and saying, "We've never had a teacher named Miss Dodds. We've got a new teacher. She was always here. This is our math teacher, and there was never a Mrs. Dodds. We don't know who Mrs. Dodds is." But sometimes Percy's best friend, Grover, is like a little shifty about it, a little shady. He goes, "We've never had a Mrs. Dodds." He's a little weird about it. So Percy is persistent. But one night Percy's studying for an exam, and he's like, "Damn, this is really hard. I'm gonna go ask Mr. Brunner for some help." So he walks on over to Mr. Brunner's office, and he's like, he hears Grover's voice in there, and he's like, "Wow, that's weird. Why is Grover talking to Mr. Brunner?" And then he hears his name, and they're like, "I can't believe they found him. We can't keep lying to him about Mrs. Dodds. There's a solstice coming up." And Percy's like, "Wow, this all sounds whack." But he goes back to bed. Then, for some reason, I can't remember, the school kicks him out again. I can't remember why he gets expelled. But he gets expelled again, so he can't come back next year. And Mr. Brunner's like, "It's probably for the best." And Percy takes personal offense to that. He gets on a bus with Grover back to his apartment. No, Grover gets on a bus with him. But Percy doesn't want Grover with him for some reason, and like ditches him at a bus station. And then he goes on home, and he's excited to see his mum, and we meet Sally Jackson, who's a fucking angel, his mother. She works a lot. She works at a sweet shop where she gets Percy a lot of blue candy because Percy's stepdad, Smelly Gabe, is a very not nice man and treats Percy like shit, and it's implied that he probably isn't very nice to Sally and is probably physical with Sally a lot too. And a little act of rebellion that Sally and Percy have is getting a lot of blue food because Gabe once said that blue food didn't exist. So they get a lot of blue food together. as a little act of rebellion. And Percy gets home, and Gabe's being a big old meanie. He's being a big old meanie, and he's annoyed that Percy's home again. And then Sally's like, hey, I got you some blue candy. Just put up with Gabe for a minute, and then we're gonna go down to that cabin we love in Montauk. They go down to the cabin in Montauk, and Gabe's like, don't fuck up my car. And then they get there, and it's nice, and Sally's like, oh, I met your dad here. He got lost at sea or something. And then halfway through the night, knock, knock, knock at the door. It's Grover. Grover's a goat. Grover has goat legs. And Percy's like, all right. And Grover's like, the Minotaur's following us. And Sally goes, okay, let's get in the car. They try to drive away, but the Minotaur's too quick. They get near the place that they need to go. Percy doesn't know where it is. It's a camp. They try and run in. Sally's like, I can't do it. I can't get through the barrier. I'm immortal. I can't get in. Percy's like, what the hell do you mean? And then the Minotaur comes, grabs Sally, grabs her real tight, and she explodes into dust. Percy gets real angry, and he fights this Minotaur. This little 12-year-old kid fights this Minotaur. He breaks off his horn and stabs him with it. And then he passes out. No. He walks up to the big house of this cabin. Grover's passed out from a car accident during all of this, by the way. He walks on up to the big house, and he sees a girl with hair curled like a princess. He says she's pretty, and she's like, he's the one, he has to be. And then another familiar voice is like, I don't know, and then he passes out. He wakes up a couple times. The pretty girl is like feeding him and is like, tell me what you know. And he's like, I don't know. Passes out again. There's a guy with a bunch of eyes, and he's like, wow, weird. Falls asleep again. Then he properly wakes up in a chair outside, and Grover is there, and he's like, hey man. And Grover's like, sorry, your mum's dead, here's a horn. And Percy's like, sick. And Grover's like, hey, someone wants to say hi. Percy walks in, it's Mr. Bronner. He steps up out of his wheelchair. He's a horse. He's a centaur. He's half horse. Sorry, I was texting a boy. It's a platonic friend, but it sounds more spicy if I just say I was texting a boy. Chiron's there, and he's like, hey kids, got something to tell you. Greek gods? Real. They're real. And your dad's one of them, probably. We don't know which one, but this is a camp for demigods. This guy here who's playing Pinnacle, which is a card game that I learned to pronounce from the musical. I said Pinnacle for years. Pinnacle. Thank you, Lightning Thief musical. He's a god. He's Dionysus. He has to watch over us because he chased a nymph and they didn't like it. Zeus didn't like it. I can't remember. And Percy's like, all right, sick. Demigod, cool. And Chiron's like, here's Annabeth. She'll take you over to Cabin 7, where we put all the kids who we don't know who their parents are. I was going to say who don't have parents, but that's not accurate. So Annabeth walks them over, and she keeps saying weird little things, and she's kind of mean. And Percy's like, well, this is a bummer. This does suck. My mum's dead. This girl's a bit standoffish to me. All right, sick. And then they go in there, and Annabeth introduces him to the leader of Cabin 7, Luke, who was very, very nice to Percy. And they're like, you're gonna stay here for a while. And then Percy spends a couple days at camp, and he spends a lot of time with Annabeth. She tutors him a lot. She becomes a lot nicer. He tries to get her to open up about her family, but she's a little guarded about that. But she gives him the rundown of the camp, and she gets a lot friendlier. Even though she's kind of like, I can't believe I thought you were the one. She keeps talking about how there's like some great prophecy, or there's meant to be some kid who's going to go on a quest, and she just wants to go on a quest. It's all she wants, because it's the real mark of a hero. And her friend Luke, who she definitely has a crush on, but that's okay, because she's 12 and he's 19, and you would think he doesn't reciprocate, because he's 19 and she's 12. He went on a quest, and that's like the coolest thing a demigod can do. She really wants a quest, and at some point they run into the people from Cabin 6, the Ares cabin, run by Clarisse, and they're big mean, and they try to give Percy a swirly, but Percy makes the bathroom explode. Like all the water and the plumbing explodes, and Annabeth is still like, wonder who his dad is. Very, very confusing. And Luke is like this mentor this whole time. He helps Percy out in sword fighting, which Percy is real good at, and when Percy's like exhausted in sword fighting, he'll like spray water all over himself and he'll feel invigorated, and everyone's like, wonder who his dad is. And he trains, and people are quite nice to him, and he starts liking it at camp. And then they have capture the flag at the end of the week, and he is on a team with the Athena cabin. So Annabeth is like, hey, I'm gonna tell you what to do because I'm the strategist. Go in the lake, go hang out there. No one will bother you, just go hang out by the lake. We don't need you. I'm going to go after the flag. And Percy's like, okay, cool. He goes off, like, near the lake, and then all the Ares caverns show up, and they're like, you and Varus does, and they all start beating the shit out of him, like, really going ham on this little kid. But then he, like, steps back into the water, and he gets really reinvigorated, and he fights back, and he breaks Clarisse's spear. She has a spear, and he breaks it, and he starts fighting back, and then it turns out that Luke stole the flag, and he won, and then Annabeth comes back, and she's like, weird that, you're really wounded, but when you step into the water, you heal. Let's try that again. So Percy does, and then all of camp start bowing to him, and he's like, this is weird. Turns out he's the son of Poseidon. He's been claimed. Oh my god, what happens after? Okay, so during this, there was an ongoing conflict that I think we knew about with Zeus and Poseidon are maybe going to go to war. And after Percy gets claimed, Chiron is like, hey, dude, they think you stole... Zeus's lightning bolt was missing, and everyone thinks you stole it. You probably didn't, but what is this quest? But you gotta go tell someone? Why is he going to Hades? Oh, wait, I remember. I don't think you stole it. It was probably Hades. Go down to the underworld, get it back, and then... Is that the quest? I think that's the quest. They gotta go to the underworld. They gotta go talk to Hades. And Percy's allowed 2 people to come along, and Annabeth has volunteered, because of course she has, and Percy wants Grover to go. And Grover's like, wow, I can't believe you picked me. And Percy's like, why? And Grover clearly is hiding something. So off they go. They're given barely any money, barely any directions as 3 12-year-olds, and then just sent on out. And they take a bus they're taking a bus somewhere, and turns out Furies, Mrs. Dodds and her friends, they've regenerated in the underworld. They've come back, they get on the bus, they have a big fight, they blow up the bus. They're like, well, shit, we gotta head somewhere. So they talk to a poodle. Is that before or after Medusa? I think it's before. They set up camp, and Grover finds a poodle. No, that's after, because that's the train tickets. I'm a fucking idiot. Is it? I don't know. This is the one that I thought I could do well. No, I think it's after. So they need a place to rest, and they smell food coming from a like garden gnome place. There's a bunch of garden statues, and there's a really nice woman who's got like she's kind of wearing a lot of, like, different cloth pieces kind of over her whole body. She has, like, a headpiece on where, like, they can't see her face. But she's nice, and she makes, like, a bunch of food for them. She makes them, like, burgers and fries, and they're like, this shit is great. This shit slaps. They all start chatting, and she calls Annabeth by name, even though she shouldn't know her name. But they're all having a good time, and then she's like, oh, I get people to pose for my statues. Can I take a photo of you? And Annabeth is like, sick, let's go. But then she thinks about it more, and she's like, maybe not. But Percy's still kind of like, I feel kind of obligated, like, let's do it. This woman's nice, she gave us food. Grover the whole time is like, no, don't like this, I want a piece. And Grover's like, hey, that's my Uncle Ferdinand over there, he got killed by Medusa. And Annabeth is like, fuck, alright. So they all try and cover their eyes, so they don't get turned into a statue. Percy gets, like, a shield from somewhere, and he uses that to look at her reflection, because Annabeth tells him to, because he's not figuring this out on his own. Annabeth, because it happened with, like, a crystal ball. No, it happened with a shield originally, and then Percy's using something else. Percy's using, like, a crystal ball kind of thing to see her. Fuck, man. He uses something, and he cuts off her head, and then Annabeth's like, hold on, she can still freeze people even after we've cut off her head, let's wrap this shit up. Then they go and make camp for the night, and Grover befriends a poodle, and the poodle, lets them take... the poodle lets Grover take her home to the parents, so they get a reward, and then they buy train tickets or something like that. They get on a train, and they head on their way, and they stop near the that big thing. He jumps from it. What's it called? The Gateway Arch? The Gateway Arch. They stop off there because Annabeth wants to look, and the train ends near there anyway. They go up in the Gateway Arch, and they go and they see it, and it's beautiful. But then Percy, because it's very crowded. Grover and Annabeth get in one elevator, and Percy's like, I'm gonna catch the next one. But then there's a woman and a little puppy on the deck with him, and then the puppy turns into a chimera, and they're attacking him. And her name is Echidna, but she hates Australia, and to get out of the situation, Percy jumps from the gateway arch into a lake that apparently he is not actually possible to do, but I believe in him. And he gets a vision from a water nymph who tells him to talk to her again before they join Hades or something. Maybe she gives him pearls there. Maybe she doesn't. Anyway, they wind up at a diner with Ares. Ares is like, hey, I'ma help you out if you go do this little thing for me. I need you to go get back at my girlfriend's scarf. So they go, okay. And they go to this, like, old theme park called Waterland, and there's, like, a Tunnel of Love ride, and in the boat that's, like, at the bottom of this empty pool is Aphrodite's scarf, and they need to go get that for Ares. So Percy and Annabeth waddle down in there to grab it, and Annabeth's like, oh, I can't go in here with you. It would be so gross. What if someone saw me going with you into the Tunnel of Love? Because she's 12. They go down there, they grab it, and then they hear, like, cameras come on, and they hear, like, the voice of Hephaestus, and it's like, broadcasting live to Olympus TV, and they're like, fuck, this was a trap set to, like, catch Ares and Aphrodite and humiliate them. And all these little mechanical spiders come out, and they're all coming towards them, and there's fucking thousands of them, and Percy's trying to swing them all away with Riptide, and Annabeth is like, she gets, like, frozen with fear, and Percy doesn't know why, but he's like, okay, I'm gonna just keep killing all these spiders. He does his best, but there's, it's not going well, they're being overwhelmed. Then he uses his water powers to make water come back into the ride, and they kind of, like, ride the boat over, like, waves, and then they jump out at a moment, and Grover captures them and flies them down, because Luke gives them flying shoes. Luke gave Percy flying shoes as a gift on the quest, but Percy can't use them because Zeus doesn't like sons of Poseidon in the sky, and he doesn't particularly like Percy in the sky because he thinks he stole his lightning bolt. So Percy can't fly, but Grover flies, catches them, they get down safely, and then Ares gives them a ride on this, like, animal transport kind of car that takes them to Vegas. So on that car, Annabeth has a little heart-to-heart with Percy where she opens up about her fear of spiders from being a daughter of Athena, and she opens up to him about how she's been kind of standoffish because there's this age-old rivalry between Athena and Poseidon, and she opens up a little bit more about her family as well, and she basically ends it with saying, I don't know what our parents will do if we go to war, but I just know I'll be fighting by your side because you're my friend, Seaweed Brain. Any more stupid questions? They get to Vegas, the kids break out the animals who are on the car because they've been mistreated, and then they go into the Lotus Casino. I don't know why they go in there, but they go into the Lotus Casino, and it's really cool in there. Turns out it's, like, sick. They've got all these rides, and they get free food and clothes, and it's great. Stay there for a little bit until after what he thinks is a couple hours, Percy kind of clocks on to, after talking to some people that, like, people have been in there for, like, years and think it's days. So he finds Grover and Annabeth, tells them they get out of there, but they've wasted a lot of time on the quest. Now they get a taxi to LA. Percy goes into the ocean again, I think, and gets the pearls from the nymph here, I think. And then they head through a record label building into the underworld, and they pay Charybdis some drachmas, and they're like, oh, we all drowned in a bathtub, and then Charybdis lets them through. And they start walking through the underworld. They get off the boat, they start walking through the underworld. Grover has the flying shoes on still, and the flying shoes start pulling him off in a different direction. And Percy and Annabeth are like, wow, that's weird. And then he starts getting really dragged off, and they manage to get the shoes, like, off his feet just before he falls off a cliff. And then they realize the cliff, Tartarus, the, like, lowest wing section of the underworld, is really scary in there. You don't want to go in there. It's like where monsters go when they're killed. Big bad news. And they're like, fuck, that's so weird. Why would the shoes be doing this? That's really weird. Oh, this whole book, Percy has been having dreams about this voice in a pit. And he thinks the voice is in the pit now. That's the pit that the voice is from. And then they keep going on their way. They throw out the shoes. And they go and meet Zeus. Fuck! No, they go and meet Hades. Percy's like, hey, you got my mum. Because his mum isn't dead. He found out that his mum probably isn't dead and was just transported to the underworld at some point. And he's like, hey, you got my mum? And Hades is like, you got the lightning bolt? And Percy's like, no. And he's like, open up your backpack. Lightning bolt's in there. Lightning bolt. Ares gave them a backpack. The lightning bolt is in the backpack. Yeah. How did they get out of this? But they're like, well, what if you don't have the bolt, then who did? Oh, we got to figure this out. But Hades is like, you can't take your mum if you don't give me the bolt. But Percy's like, no. And he's like, we've got these pearls, we're gonna dip. But Hades is like, you only got 3. And Grover stays behind because he's the protector. So they take the pearls, right? Or is that just in the movie? Hang on, who stays behind? Someone stays behind. Someone stays behind. And then they get to the beach. They go up through the earth and land on a beach. And they realize, shit, this was all set up by Ares. We got the backpack from Ares. He put the boat in there. He's found a way. He's orchestrating this because he wants a war. Because he's the god of war. So Ares shows up and it's like, oh, you were meant to die in the underworld, you little shit. They have a fight on the beach. Percy wins. This 12-year-old kicks Ares' ass and he wins. Goes on TV and is like, my stepdad would love to give everyone some free TVs, hee hee. They race to Olympus. They get on a plane to New York and they go to the Empire State Building, go to 600th floor. They race in and are like, it was Ares, it wasn't me, it wasn't like Hades, it wasn't Poseidon, it was Ares. And the gods believe him and they let them get whoever was left behind in the underworld. They set them free. I think it is Grover, but it might be his mum, and I'm just being confused by the movie. But they get him out, and then Percy goes home, and they go back to camp, and it's lovely, but they're still like, Ares must have had a demigod helper, because gods can't take the other gods' like mantles. That's not the right word, you know what I mean? And on the last day of camp, Luke, Percy's best bud, is like, hey, I got some Coca-Cola. Do you want to come hang out and say goodbye? And Percy's like, yeah, my main man, Luke, I do. And so they go out there, and Luke starts talking shit about his dad really intensely. And Percy's like, wow, that's a bit weird. Bit much, dude. Yeah, you know, your dad's absent, but he's probably not that bad a dude. And then Luke's like, you see, the thing is, though, I am the lightning thief, and I do have this scorpion here that's gonna kill you, so, here you go. And he throws it. And basically, if this scorpion, like, stings you at all, like, you're dead. You've got, like, 60 seconds, and they're in, like, the middle of the woods, so he can't really reach anyone in 60 seconds. Percy tries to cut it with a sword, but, he got stung. He moves as quick as he can back to camp, and he makes it in time, and Chiron sees him, and he wakes up in a couple days in the sick bay, and Annabeth's like, we're gonna stop Luke, but I'm going home for the year. What about you? And Percy's like, me too. Year later, Percy is at a different school. He got this best mate, Tyson. He keeps seeing someone follow him all morning. Very weird, very weird. Last day of school, his mum's being a bit weird and being like, do we need to go to camp? What if we don't go to camp? Like, what if we don't go to camp? Percy's like, I want to go to camp. But he goes to school and there's all these new big bullies there today. And then they go to gym and it's dodgeball today. And Percy's like, wow, weird. A bunch of these guys look really, like, big and large, and turns out they're monsters, and they're like, you're a son of Poseidon, and we are gonna kill you. And they use, like, giant flaming things instead of the dodgeballs, just start throwing them at Percy, and Percy's good friend Tyson can, like, catch the fire and not get burned, and that's a bit weird. Percy tries and fights a lot of them, but he doesn't have Riptide with him. But he kills a few of them. He wins the fight, and the last one that they're fighting gets, like, stabbed from the back, like a blade just appears in their stomach. And they're like, wow, what's that? And pulls out the dagger, and it's Annabeth, and she's here, and she was following Percy all morning. And she's like, hey, thought I'd help out with that. And then she punches a bully, and is like, that's for being mean to my friend or something. It's really cute. And then she's being really mean to Tyson. She's like, we need to take a cab to camp, but I hate your friend. And Percy's like, what the fuck is going on? And Annabeth's like, that's a Cyclops. And Percy's like, no, I would have noticed if he's a Cyclops. And Annabeth was like, no, the mist was working on you, dumbass. That's a Cyclops. Look at his eye. And yep, it's a Cyclops. He got one eye. Then the three of them, they get in the cab with the 3 crazy ladies who only have the one eye, the Grey sisters. They go to camp. They get there, and the camp is under attack. Turns out that basically the tree that protects the camp, which is Talia's tree, she went on the run with Annabeth and Luke. She was Annabeth and Luke's, like, best friend, and she got turned into a tree when they first arrived at camp when she was 12, because she stood her ground protecting Annabeth and Luke, and Zeus turned her into a tree to kind of try and save her, and her like magical essence creates this barrier to protect. It keeps monsters out. You can only, like, get through if you're invited inside the barrier because of Talia's tree. But someone's poisoned Talia's tree. It's dying, so the barriers are fucked. And yeah, they're being attacked at camp. So Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson show up, and they let Tyson in, and they, he's very helpful, and they win the fight. But then they go in, and they're trying to live their normal life at camp, but obviously some shit is going down, and Chiron is still there, but there's another guy hanging out at camp, and I can't remember what his name is. They can't eat food. Tantalus? Is that his name? He hates Percy and Annabeth, and they are like, the only thing that can save our camp is the golden fleece. Only thing that can save our camp is the golden fleece. And Tantalus is like, all right, sick, I'll grant a quest, because now Chiron's gone because they think he poisoned the tree. So Tantalus is like, sick, we're gonna have the leader of our chariot race, Clarisse, lead they had chariot races, lead the quest. And Percy and Annabeth lost because they protected the camp, basically. But they're like, we're gonna have our leader, Clarisse, go on this quest. And Percy and Annabeth are like, but we've been having dreams about our friend Grover in a wedding dress. Forgot to mention that. Percy's been having dreams about his friend Grover in a wedding dress, and Grover's apparently created an empathy link between the two of them, and he's been trapped by a giant cyclops, and he needs help. So they're like, we can't just fucking sit here because Clarisse isn't going to go after Grover, and we need to get the fleece ourselves, even if it means getting kicked out of camp. Percy goes and sets out to go off, and then he sees someone on a beach, and it's Hermes. And Hermes gives him some little presents and is like, hey, can you save my son? Maybe he's gone down an evil path, but can you turn him around and can you save him? And Percy went, I'll try. Annabeth and Tyson are like, we're coming with you, bro. Hello, Percy. And off they go, and they ride hippocampi to a cruise ship that has Australians on it, is what I remember. It's called the Princess Andromeda. And they get on there, and all the like people on there, all the tourists like acting real weird, but they stay like a night on there, and then the next day they realize that the place is like crawling with monsters. And turns out Luke's running the ship. It's Luke's ship, and he's like, hey guys, I gotta kill you probably. I think I should do that. And they escape through some means. They get out of there, and they go off on their own little quest. And they wind up on this little island where there's a donut shop. But the donut shop has a, what's the thing with all the head? Hydra. There's a Hydra there. And they're fighting it, but then this like warship blasts the fuck out of this Hydra. It's Clarisse, and she's like, I've got to save yours ass, get on here. And basically they realize that the way to get to the Golden Fleece is through the Sea of Monsters, which is basically the Bermuda Triangle, but it's dangerous as fuck. I think Annabeth wants to go one certain way, but Clarisse is like, well, no, we're going this way. They try and go that way. This ship blows up. The ship just straight up fucking blows up. Tyson is nowhere to be found. Percy and Annabeth get stranded on this island. They don't know where Clarisse is either, but Percy and Annabeth get stranded on this island, and it's like a spa, and they're like, wow, this is fucking lovely. And this woman, Cece, is like, oh my gosh, you poor souls, like, welcome to my spa. And she's like, hee Annabeth, go get a makeover. Hee Percy, I'm gonna give you your makeover in here myself. She's like, hee look in the mirror, Percy, don't you like what you see? Have this drink. And Percy's like, okay, drinks it, gets turned into a guinea pig. It's Cersei. She used to turn men into pigs, but they're messy, so now she turns them into guinea pigs. She puts him in a little guinea pig cage with a bunch of, like, deadly pirates, and Percy's like, well, this sucks. Annabeth comes in, and Percy, in his little guinea pig self, was like, help. He's tapping on the windows. He's like, please help me. And Annabeth doesn't really know what's going on, but she knows something weird is going on, and she works out that it's Cersei, and she threatens her with a knife. But then she has these, like, little healing gummy bears from Hermes, and she throws them into the guinea pig cage and just prays one of them as Percy, and he gets to it, and he does. And then they run out, and all the other pirates are like, we want to kill you, Cersei, you bitch. So they go after Cersei. She's taken care of. Percy and Annabeth run, and they get on this pirate ship that's there. And they get on there, and they start sailing still towards where I think the Golden Fleece is, and where Grover is. They're going, and then Annabeth is like, we're going near the sirens. I'm gonna put some wax in my ears. No. Annabeth is like, I'm going to tie myself to this mast, and you're going to put wax in your ears because I want to hear their song, because apparently if you survive it, you become, like, the wisest person ever. So I'm going to listen to the song, you put wax in your ears, I'm going to tie myself to this mast, whatever I do, I'm going to beg you, I'm going to cry, I'm going to beg you more than anything to let me go, and you can't. They kind of start sailing through, and Percy's got wax in his ears, and he looks over, and Annabeth is screaming, crying, throwing up. She's like, please let me out, please. And it's breaking Percy's heart, because, like, that's his best friend, and he's like, I can't look at you. So he looks away, because it's hurting hiding his soul, looks back, this bitch is gone, looks in the water, she's swimming, she's in a bunch of, like, there's jagged rocks everywhere, and he's like, oh shit, so he jumps in, he swims after her, and he's a son of Poseidon, so he gets through, and when he grabs her, he basically sees what her vision from the sirens is, and it's basically this redesigned skyline of New York, and Annabeth and her mum and her dad having a picnic, and Luke is there, and they're all happy. They're a happy little family. Percy kind of brings her down to the bottom of the ocean and puts, like, this air bubble so she can breathe in it, but it's deep enough that she can't hear the siren sounds, and she hugs him and she cries at the bottom of the sea. And then he takes her back to the ship, and she's like, my fatal flaw is hubris. Every demigod has a fatal flaw. This has shown me that mine is hubris. Then they keep on sailing, and they make their way to the island that Grover is on, and they climb under sheep and get in there. They find Grover. He's in a wedding dress. They save him, and they're going all right. And then Clarisse is there too, and she's a little cocky, and she fucks things up, and I can't remember how. They're fighting the giant, the Cyclops, sorry, not a giant, just a big Cyclops. Tyson shows up. He's alive because he's son of Poseidon, and he survives fire, so he's there. Annabeth has forgiven him. She's gotten over her prejudice and racism against Cyclopses, because character development. What happens? Annabeth nearly dies. They put the golden fleece on her. Percy, I don't know, they sail off. Percy calls her a genius. They get back to the normal shore, and as soon as they get there, Percy's like, you have enough money for a plane ticket. We have enough money for one plane ticket. Clarisse, this is your quest. Take the golden fleece, get it back to camp. You will get there before, like, Talia's tree dies. You go. Off you pop. Make a move. Bye. And Luke's whole ship shows up and is like, I'ma fight all of y'all. But Percy does a little, like, iris message to camp, and that distracts them, and Luke doesn't believe that they've already, like, gotten rid of the fleece. There's, like, no way that Percy would have done that, but he did, because he's a good person. So they're like, fuck, we can't take the fleece from you. And then all these party ponies show up and beat all of Luke's guys, and then they set free all these Pegasi, and then they make their way back to camp, and they do another chariot race, and Percy and Annabeth win. She kisses him on the cheek, and they repair the barrier at camp, and then Percy wakes up to a bunch of mayhem one morning, and he's like, what's going on? And he runs down to where Annabeth is, and she's crying next to a girl by Talia's tree, and Percy's like, hey, what's going on? Who are you? And the girl's like, I'm Talia, daughter of Zeus. So cut to another year forward, and Talia's best buds with them all now, and they're at a dance recruiting some demigods. Grover is like, I think there's some demigods here. Come to this school dance. And they do. They go to this school dance, and Percy and Annabeth dance, and it's real cute, and she's taller than them, and Percy's mad about it. And Annabeth is like, I have something to tell you, maybe. But then they notice that these two kids they're watching, this boy and girl, brother and sister, have gone missing, and there's two teachers who are probably monsters, and they're also missing. So Percy runs off after them because he's trying to protect them. And yep, one of them's a monster, and they're like, oh, demigod's gonna kill you guys. And Percy meets Nico and Bianca. Woo, the demigods. Yep. They start fighting, and this guy who's all kind of like a scorpion nearly kills him, but Annabeth shows up and, like, tackles him off a cliff. And then Annabeth is gone too. Artemis and the hunters show up at some point as well. I can't remember why they're there, but they show up too. I think they were hunting the scorpion dude or something. They show up as well, and they make camp, and they're like, sorry, Percy, don't jump after her. She's gone. Sorry about that. And they're like, hey, Bianca, want to join us? And Bianca's like, yeah, I do, before having a conversation with her brother. And then they tell her brother, and they're like, yep, your sister's gonna be immortal, and she's kind of leaving you. And he's understandably kind of bummed about this. This kid's like 9 years old. He's understandably upset. And then Apollo shows up and gives them a ride back to Camp Half-Blood, and the hunters are gonna stay at Camp Half-Blood for a little bit. And they arrive, and Talia can't drive the sky. Talia can't drive the sun. They get to camp, and what the fuck happens in this book? They get to camp. At some point, they play capture the flag, and Talia blames Percy for Annabeth falling off the cliff. So they have a big old fight. And then they realize that they need a quest to go save Artemis, because Artemis has gone missing, and Percy has a dream that Artemis is where Annabeth is being held captive, because Annabeth is being held captive and was holding up the sun, and then they had a dream that Artemis is holding up the sun, took it from Annabeth. and they need to go save her, but Percy doesn't get put on this quest. It's Talia, Grover, Zoe, and Bianca, and another hunter. One of the hunters got a t-shirt from one of the Stoll brothers, and it makes her, like, have a rash or something. So she doesn't end up going. And Percy takes his good old Pegasus, who we saved in the last book, Blackjack, and they fly, and they follow them for a while. And he fights a lion, and then they see him, and he joins the quest. And they fight some zombie things, I believe, and then figure out a way to kill them. And Grover's like, wow, I drank coffee and I felt Pan. I felt Pan. He's alive. I felt his vibes. They ride in this truck with old cars, and Apollo's there, and he's talking to Percy, and I can't remember what he says, but it's probably some kind of advice. And then they are in the desert, and they set up camp there, and Ares pulls up on a car, and Percy's like, want to fight? And Ares is like, nah, my bitch is here for you. And Percy gets in the car, and there's Aphrodite, and her appearance changes when you look at her, so she looks like a bunch of people that you specifically find attractive. So she morphs from, like, you know, people that Percy had crushed on, like actresses and weather women that Percy had crushes on when he was a kid, into Annabeth. And Percy thinks nothing of that. She keeps changing, and she tells him basically like, hi, you're on this quest for love. And Percy's like, no. And she's like, you're here for love. I love your love life. I'm making a mess for you. Mwah, thanks, bye. And she pieces out. I think she tells him not to get anything in the... No, that's just from prophecy. They've been told not to grab anything in, I think, Hephaestus' junkyard, and they wind up in a junkyard, and they're all like, right, everyone, don't grab anything. And then this giant automaton comes to life, and they're like, why the fuck are we being attacked if no one grabbed anything? Turns out Bianca grabbed a little figure for her brother Nico, because he loves this game called Myth and Magic, and there was this Hades little statue, and he was like the one statue that Nico didn't have. So Bianca was being a sweetheart, but she grabbed something in there, and Percy's like, well, you fucked up. And Bianca's like, look, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to kill him from inside, and I'm the person who set this off, so I have to be the one to do it. Let me do it. And Percy goes, okay. Oh my god, at the beginning of this quest, by the way, Percy promised Nico to try and keep Bianca safe. Bianca goes in, and then the automaton shuts down, but she completely disappears. They search for her all night, and she's nowhere to be found. Bianca D'Angelo is lost in the land without water. Is that what it was? Keep on going on their quest. There's a point where Percy realizes that Talia is scared of heights, and then he looks out for her like the whole quest and makes sure that she doesn't have to descend heights. And they end up at the Hoover Dam, and they stop there because Annabeth loves the Hoover Dam, and they kind of stop there as an honorary thing for Annabeth, basically. And everyone's like, I want to use the damn bathroom. I want to, because Zoe speaks like an old Shakespearean person. She's like, I want to use the damn bathroom. I want to eat some damn nachos. And everyone's laughing their like asses off, and she doesn't get it, and it's very funny. And then Percy gets in an elevator and goes down the dam because they're being chased by those skeleton zombie dudes again, and he's in there with probably Athena, and she's kind of like, hey, you want to save my daughter? But he gets out of there, and then he runs through, and he goes and he tries and stabs a girl with his sword because he thought he was a soldier. But she's like, why would you do that? That was really mean of you. And he's like, wait, you can see my sword? And she's like, yeah. He's like, all right. And she's like, why are you stabbing me? And he was like, didn't think I was stabbing you, and I didn't think you could see the sword. And she was like, well, I'm Rachel Elizabeth there. What's going on? And Percy's like, I don't know. And then she distracts people for him because she's cool. And then he gets out of there, and an automaton a statue of someone comes to life, I think, and helps them out. And they get away. And then they get to a dock, and Percy has to wrestle this seal man guy who looks like Santa and hold on to him as he transforms and jumps out of the sea. And Percy does it, and then what the fuck happens? Luke shows up at one point and is like, Talia, join me. And she'd be thinking about it for a second, but they're like, no. And they leave. And then they go to Annabeth's dad's house. And he's like, hey kids, spelling is fun. He's like, hey kids, what's going on? And they fill him in. And he's like, all right, I'll drive you up this mountain. You know the mountain she's at? Sick, I'll drive you. And he drives them up there. And Zoe fights a dragon on their way up. Get up there, and they find Artemis and Annabeth. And Luke is there. He's behind all of this, obviously, because he always is. And he's still communicating with Kronos. And they have a sarcophagus now where, like, they think Kronos is in it. It's a bit weird. That's what they wanted the golden fleece for. But, yeah, they they be fighting, and then Percy holds up this guy. There's a Titan there, and it's Zoe's dad. And Talia kicks Luke off the cliff, and it's great. They trick the Titan into holding up this guy again, and then it turns out that Zoe got, like, killed by the dragon, and she dies. And it's big sad. And then they go to Olympus. Artemis is like, I want to elect a new Hunter of Artemis, and Talia told Percy at one point that Annabeth was thinking about joining the Hunters of Artemis, and Percy's in this panic. Because when you're a Hunter of Artemis, you swear off love forever, and you go off, and you don't really interact with the other demigods, and you go, you know, do your own thing, be celibate, and be immortal. And Percy doesn't want Annabeth to do that, because he's in love with her, and he starts panicking, and Annabeth's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then Artemis is like, Talia, you want to be my new main gal? And Talia's like, hell yeah. And then Percy's like, phew. And then Athena comes up to Percy and is like, I don't approve of your friendship with my daughter. And Percy's like, oh well. And Athena's like, your biggest flaw is loyalty. And Percy's like, okay, sick. And then Annabeth comes over and is like, is my mum giving you a hard time? And Percy says it's fine. And then Annabeth is like, what were you going to say to me earlier? And Percy's like, haha, that you owe me a dance? And Annabeth is like, okay. And they dance, and it's cute. And then the next year, Percy's at orientation for a new school that his mum's boyfriend is a teacher at. His mum's boyfriend, sick. Also, Sally killed Gabe with Medusa. She's got a new boyfriend now, and he's really nice. And Rachel Elizabeth Dare is there. And she's like, you'll see this shit? And Percy's like, what? And she's like, cheerleaders are kind of fucked up. Kind of weird. And Percy's like, huh? Yeah, it turns out the cheerleaders are all monsters. They try and attack him, and they frame him to look like he's burning the school down. Percy runs out, and he runs into Annabeth, and she was going on a date with him, and she was going to see him, and she came all the way from camp to hang out with him early, and she's all excited when he shows up. But then Rachel Dare runs out and writes her phone number on Percy's hand in front of Annabeth, and then Annabeth is a bit pissed off, and she's like, let's just get to fucking camp. Shut up. Let's just get to camp. So they go to camp. Grover's on trial for something. And Grover has a girlfriend now, and Juniper's there. And then they play this little game in the woods, and Percy and Annabeth fall into this weird void of space, and it's all dark in there. And Annabeth grabs Percy's hand. Turns out they fell into the labyrinth. Like Daedalus's labyrinth. They come back out, and then Chiron's like, we probably need to go back in there, because we think Luke's going through the labyrinth for something, and we need to do it first, because something's going on. But we tried to send Chris Rodriguez through, and he's real fucked in the head. So Annabeth, here's your quest, bestie. And she's like, I need 4 people on this quest. I don't give a fuck about your rules. I need Percy, I need Grover, I need Tyson, and me. And Annabeth is breaking a bunch of rules this book. She's sitting at the Poseidon table when she's not meant to. She's breaking the number of people allowed on this quest. She's come a long way as a character. And Percy goes into her cabin one day, and she's crying, and she lets him hug her and comfort her through this, and she opens up about being really scared about her quest, and she's keeping part of her prophecy from everyone. She's not telling them what the last couple lines were. Percy thinks this might have something to do with it, but he goes and she allows him to comfort her, and that's a huge thing for Annabeth. And then they go on their quest, and it's going pretty well. The labyrinth is really confusing. They get a bunch of different little scenario areas and tricks, and Annabeth's pride is getting in the way of some shit. They find out that Nico is kind of going along with them, is going through the labyrinth probably as well, and he's trying to resurrect his sister. He's trying to resurrect Bianca. He's kind of gone, he ran away at the end of he ran away at the end of Time's Curse, and he's probably a son of Hades, we worked out. So he's kind of off on his own. He's trying to resurrect Bianca, but they all end up, and Nico was there at this weird stable place where Percy has to scoop up a bunch of horse poop, and then they have an archery fight, I think. And yep, and then they take Nico back to camp or something. I don't know. Nico goes along with them for a while. At one point, they all kind of split up, and Grover and Tyson go off on their own way, and Nico does something. And Percy and Annabeth go into Mount St. Helens, and there's a bunch of Telkines in there, and Percy's very convinced that they're gonna die in there, and he's like, Annabeth, you need to get the fuck out of here, put on your invisibility cap, leave me behind, get out of here, you need to go get help, we're fucked, you need to go get help, leave. And Annabeth's like, I don't want to fucking leave without you, and Percy's like, don't be stupid, and she kisses him, and then she puts on her invisibility cap, and leaves. Percy blows up the volcano and then ends up on Calypso's island. Spends a couple weeks with Calypso. Calypso falls in love with him. She's very, very nice, but Percy has a lot of obligations, so he goes back home. And he's, in love with Annabeth. Gets home. It's been 2 weeks. Annabeth is, putting on a funeral for him. She's crying, saying that he was the bravest person she ever knew. And then he's right there. And she gives him this big dramatic hug in front of everyone. And then she gets embarrassed. She gets angry at him. And they go and meet with Chiron. And Annabeth clearly knows where he's been and is acting, very snarky. And Chiron's she's jealous. And Percy's still and then Percy is I think we need to bring Rachel Elizabeth Dare on our quest because I've worked out that she can see through the mist and that's how we get through the labyrinth. So Annabeth's real pissy about it, but she allows it to happen. Rachel comes along. It's a big angsty fest. I think Nico's there as well at this point. But they succeed and they continue going through the labyrinth. And they are more successful this time. They run into Lucas Stellan a couple more times, and Annabeth is still clinging onto this idea of him, and it's really frustrating Percy. But she's clearly having this huge emotional kind of reaction where she can't accept the villain that Luke has become. And it's really getting on Percy's nerves too. And they're both being quite toxic, to be honest, but they're 14, so what the fuck else can we expect from them? This is all going down, and they find Pan, I think, happens first. They run into Tyson and Grover again. Grover has found Pan. Pan dies and gives them all a little gift of the wild. And then they run into Luke again, and Luke's body is now being used. They're putting Kronos in Luke's body. And Annabeth sees, and it's really fucking traumatic for her, obviously. Rachel throws a plastic blue hairbrush at his eye, and that gives them time to escape, and they get back to Camp Half-Blood as they're being invaded. And they fight in this battle, and a lot of people die, but they ultimately save camp and live to see another day. Cut to a year again. It's right before Percy's birthday, and Percy always knows that there's some prophecy about him reaching 16. So he's real nervous about it, and they're about to go to war, but he's on a nice little day with Rachel, and then Blackjack shows up, and Charles Beckendorf shows up, and I'm like, hey, we gotta go, peace. And Rachel kisses him, and it's go, bye. And then Beckendorf is like, I won't mention that to Annabeth if you don't want me to. And Percy's like, thank you. They go, and they get onto the Princess Andromeda, and they're trying to destroy it. But some things go wrong. Percy fights a giant crab. He slides underneath it and stabs it from underneath. It's really cool. He fights a giant crab, but something goes wrong, and Beckendorf can't get off the Princess Andromeda in time before it gets blown up. So Beckendorf gets killed with the ship. Percy gets back to camp. Selena's obviously incredibly devastated. That's his girlfriend. She's devastated about this. Annabeth is being okay, but they've apparently had a really emotionally distant summer. She didn't show up to his birthday party. He had a big I'm the moment I knew moment. Percy finally finds out the great prophecy, and him and Annabeth are getting to a normal state again, and they're doing carbon inspections, and Annabeth is like, all this stuff with Charles and Selena, it really starts to make you think, huh? And Percy's like, I don't know. And Annabeth calls him a coward, and he doesn't think that it's about the quest. And then Nico shows up and is like, hey, that plan I had? We should do that plan. And Percy's like, all right. So they shadow travel, and they go meet Luke's mum, and she's a little bit traumatized and unwell. And she's been mentally unwell since Luke was a kid, and that was a big reason we learn as to why Luke blamed Hermes for his absence, because his mum was very unstable and Hermes didn't help her or offer Luke better care. And they find out that Luke got before Luke took Kronos' soul into his body, he got the Curse of Achilles, which basically means that you're invincible except for an Achilles heel, and you need a guardian's permission to do it. So they find out that Luke had that done, and they're like, all right, Percy, you need to do the same. So they go find Sally, and Sally's like, fucking hell, I guess. And then they go into the underworld. Percy bathes in the river Styx, and he sees Annabeth in his vision. She's his tie to the mortal world and the immortal world. Percy has the Curse of Achilles now. Woo! He goes back to camp, and then they're like, oh, we gotta go fight in New York. Kronos has put all of New York to sleep, and they gotta go fight. And there's a bunch of different fights that happen, and I always fuck up the order of them. There's one where the entire Apollo cabin disappears, which is really fucked. And then there's the one where Percy creates a little storm, a little fucking tornado around himself, and everyone gets real scared. And he's fighting Kronos and shit, and things are happening. And then there's one where someone on Luke's team, I think it's Ethan Nakamura, who was in Battle Labyrinth, he has an eye patch. He goes to stab Annabeth. He goes to stab Percy in his lower back, which is where his Achilles spot is, but Annabeth somehow knows that that's his Achilles spot and dives in front of the blade. And then Percy, one of my favorite moments, goes, stay back, no one touches her, and he does this huge arc around her with a sword, and it's really romantic and protective. They take Annabeth back to be fucking stitched up, And Percy goes and visits her, and they have this really, really beautiful romantic moment where he's like, why the fuck would you do that? And she was like, you would do the same for me. He tells her that he has taken the Achilles curse and kind of like shows her the spot on his lower back, and he like guides her hand there. It's really romantic and like gorgeous, because it's like his most vulnerable place, and he's trusting her with that, and she calls him cute when he's worried, and it's really, really sweet. And then at one point, Rachel Elizabeth Dare has been having dreams about this all happening. She flies in on a helicopter, but when the helicopter enters the city, the pilot goes to sleep. Annabeth, fucking injured as hell, gets in there and saves her, and it's like, wow, Percy, so happy your friend Rachel's here. And then she gets angsty again, and then they have like the actual big battle of New York, and Percy, Talia, Grover, and Annabeth wind up like in the main building of the Empire State, going up to Olympus. At some point, Talia gets crushed under rubble, and Annabeth is nearly gonna fall to her death, but Percy catches her. He's like, she's not gonna fall. He nearly goes over with her. He's about to fall with her, but refuses to let it happen. But Grover pulls them back, and they get into Olympus. Percy sits on his dad's throne at one point and nearly gets blown to pieces, but he doesn't. They get in there, and basically at some point Kronos gets in there too. They have this big kind of like fight with Kronos, and at one point he cuts Annabeth's cheek, I think. He hurts Annabeth in some way, and then Annabeth kind of goes like, family, Luke, you promised. And Annabeth just keeps trying to tug at this emotional cord that this is still Luke in there. And it eventually works, and Luke kind of controls his own body long enough still to take Annabeth's dagger and like stab himself in his own Achilles spot with it. So he's sacrificing himself to kill Kronos, and he finally does the right thing in the end. Then he dies on the floor, and there's this real weird moment that I'll never get over, where he asks Annabeth if she ever loved him, and it's very heavily implied and written in the sense that Luke did love her, and in subsequent books it is referred to that Luke reciprocated Annabeth's crush on him. So he was a 3-year-old at this point with a crush on a 16-year-old. Lock him up. Lock him up. Fields of punishment for you, sir. Annabeth's like, you'll get Elysium. You did the right. You're a hero. Hee hee. And Annabeth tells him that she always viewed him like a brother, which is a blatant lie, but it's so funny because brother's owning him on his deathbed. Very funny. I love you, Annabeth Chase. She looks at Percy like she's drinking in the fact that he's still here. And it's gorgeous, and he dies, and it's sad. And Annabeth is sad. And then all the gods are like, you saved Olympus. We're going to grant you some wishes. Annabeth, yeah, you're the architect of Olympus. Percy Jackson, you want immortality? And he's like, no. Do you want to pay your child support? And they're like, fine. We'll fucking claim our kids, I guess. And they're real pissy about it. And he's like, build some extra cabins at camp. You've got a lot of kids out there. Just make them feel fucking welcome. And they do it. And then Hermes is a dick to Annabeth about Luke dying. And they go back to camp. And Rachel Elizabeth Dare decides to become the new Oracle. And it works. And she's not dating anyone anymore. And she's like, do I have to tell you what to do now? And Percy's like, no. He sees Annabeth the next day, and she's made him a little cupcake. She's made it herself, and it has blue icing, and he makes fun of it. And they start having, finally, a conversation about their feelings. And he tries to tell her that he saw her in the River Styx. I think he does tell her that he saw her in the River Styx. And then he's like, and when the gods were offering immortality, and she's like, anyone in particular? And he's like, you're laughing at me. And she's like, I'm not laughing at you. And he's like, you are so not making this easy. And she's like, I will never, ever make things easy for you, seaweed brain. Get used to it. And they kiss. And then all of camp throws them into the lake because they're making fun of them. Because they're like, about fucking time, losers. And they have the best underwater kiss of all time. And then they have like a nice last month of camp. And then they all head on down. And Percy runs after Annabeth on the hill, and they never look back. And that's Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I am so tired, and I'm quite drunk, and I'm going to keep drinking, but I don't think I can keep going. I think maybe I'll have to film I'll film a Heroes of Olympus and a Trials of Apollo one on different occasions, I think, because I can't be doing this. And like, this is the series I had the most coherent idea of. And I'm like slurring my words. Anyway, stand Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase. I don't know, man. Thank you for watching if you did. If you want to subscribe, I make a lot of nerdy videos. You can watch some of those, or subscribe if you want to see more of them. I have other social media, it'll all be linked below. Thank you for being here. Cheers.